Hi everyone and welcome to Talking Threads, the Textile Innovation Show with me, Jessica Owen.
And me, Fiona Harron.
Each week we'll be bringing you the latest news and developments from across the textile and apparel supply chain to highlight the direction of innovation as well as the key challenges and opportunities facing this ever-evolving industry.
Yes, we will feature a wide range of textile talks in the upcoming weeks with various experts, key opinion leaders and industry innovators. And today's programme, which is sponsored by Epson, will be centred on direct-to-garment textile printing. But first, in this week's news, the 19th edition of ITMA, taking place in Milan in 2023, will feature the theme Transforming the World of Textiles. It is supported by 4 sub-themes: advanced materials, automation and digital future, innovative technologies and sustainability and circularity. Ernesta Maurer, president of Cemetex, which owns ITMA, had this to say about the upcoming showcase. ITMA 2023 will highlight innovations and new approaches that serve as catalysts to inspire and help textile and garment manufacturers grow their business, scale and sustain their transformation journey.
For the first time, ISPO Munich, the world's leading trade show for sports, is being held as an online event next week between the 1st and 5th of February. The show organiser has announced that over 500 international companies will be exhibiting at the event, giving them a chance to showcase their latest products and innovations. Alongside the show, a digital conference will also be taking place. Around 80 lectures and panel discussions and over 100 workshops will provide valuable insights for the sports and outdoor industry.
Rudolph Group has launched 2 new bio-based water-repellent textile finishes aimed at the sports and outdoor apparel markets. The 2 products, Ruco Dry Bio CGR and NPE, introduce durable water-repellent performance based on natural components. The well-balanced mix of plant-based ingredients is said to combine excellent water and stain-repellent effects with breathability and a natural handle.
The Japanese chemical and information technology company, Teijin Limited, has established the European Sustainable Technology Innovation Centre, known as ESTIC, in Arnhem in the Netherlands. The purpose of the new facility is to develop technologies for a more sustainable world, whether it be developing green materials to support the global circular economy or to develop all new businesses that leverage the life cycle capabilities of Teijin's core materials.
And finally, in non-wovens news, Domtar Corporation is selling its personal care business to American industrial partners for $920 million. The two have signed a definitive agreement in this connection. Domtar now plans to focus on building an industry-leading paper, pulp and packaging company to deliver long-term shareholder value.
Now on to today's programme, where we are focusing on direct-to-garment, or otherwise known as D2G, textile printing, an industry sector that has continued to perform well despite the economic effects of COVID-19, largely driven by customised fashion and the growth of e-commerce.
Yes, this evolution of fashion awareness is expected to attract a larger consumer base, boosting further demand for the D2G printing market, with the Asia-Pacific region leading this growth. For instance, our show sponsor Epson has recently announced that it is targeting expansion opportunities in Vietnam, establishing itself as a leader in the provision of D2G solutions across Southeast Asia. This includes the distribution of its latest D2G printer, the SureColor F3030.
Moving on then, our first guest today is Sharon Donovich, who is the Product Marketing Manager at Kornit Digital. For those of you who don't know, the company develops, manufactures and markets industrial digital printing technologies for the garment, apparel and textile industries. In this interview, Sharon talks about the company's experience with COVID-19, how the direct-to-garment market is evolving and sheds light on Kornit's recent acquisition of the software company Custom Gateway.
So Sharon, from what I've heard, Kornit has dealt with the COVID-19 pandemic quite well. And I read that your Q3 2020 figures have actually surpassed what you achieved in 2019. So how have you managed this?
So it was, a shock, I think, for everybody. So, it started in I think it started for us, the pandemic, really, we started feeling it like in March or April, and immediately, you know, customers were like very, you know, stopping everything and everybody not knowing what's going on. And you can see it very well on our stock price that it really went down. And suddenly everybody understood that actually going with direct to garment is almost the only way, because everything was locked down. You had to, you know, do shopping online. We saw that e-commerce boomed, and everybody were starting printing on demand with direct to fabric or direct to garment. And for us, it started accelerating. Suddenly, we had to install more systems. We started selling systems online, which is something, or, you know, just by on the phone or in a Zoom call, unheard of. And, you know, installing via GoPro, stuff that you would never dream of. And we had to actually accelerate our ability to install, to manufacture. We have very dedicated team, very dedicated employees. Everybody, you know, chimed in, and we made it. And you see that in the reports, you see that in the price of the stock, which is like just unbelievable, climbing all the time. So we manage it amazingly. And for us, it's another step in the change that the world is doing towards, you know, this entire concept of print on demand, without the necessity to have inventory, without the sustainability issues that we have. So it's another step, but really the pandemic accelerated that.
Yes, from what I've understand that direct garment printing industry has soared because of this rise in e-commerce, as you say. So, I mean, how else have you seen the market change recently then?
So it's a combination. It's a combination of the pandemic, right? So what we saw, and you have it like backed up in reports, that what happened in e-commerce in 3 months, first quarter of 2020, took like 10 years before for e-commerce. Okay, so it's like this huge jump in e-commerce. But the other trends were on top of that, right? So the sustainability, the fact that, you know, suddenly everybody were talking about the fact that there is no transportation. Suddenly there are no airplanes, no ships, because, you know, everything is locked down. So the air, the pollution, the carbon footprint, all those items became more and more important. People understand the impact that those industries have on Earth, and you have brands that want to shift to that, and also the brands that were not able to, you know, get access to the Far East, where usually the textile industry happens. They had to shift. They didn't want to have the inventory. So it's the pandemic just exposed all the other, besides e-commerce, the ability to support e-commerce, the other trends that we saw, you know, rising slowly in the past years. Suddenly everything, inventory became an issue, manufacturing became an issue, sustainability became a tougher issue. So the pandemic just exposed all the trends that we know of in a stronger way.
Right. Okay. I see. Now, moving on, I wanted to ask you about your recent acquisition of the software company Custom Gateway. Can I ask what the reason for this is, and whether Kornit will be sort of heading in a different direction in future because of it?
So actually, we see Custom Gateway as a complementary company to what Kornit is doing, because it's all about really on-demand manufacturing capabilities. Okay, so if Kornit was more focused in the you know, single step process, the ability to do that, the print itself and the manufacturing on demand, Custom Gateway is completing Kornit capabilities and portfolio by you know, touching this workflow side of it, but not only. So you can see that it's actually almost tied together, okay? We believe that we can bring our customers and new customers more capabilities, better way to manufacture in ways that they were not able to do before. So for us, we see that as a holistic solution, okay? So it was, the integration was very seamless. It's like immediately we embrace them, and it's a natural solution in Kornit portfolio.
Okay, right. And aside from this then, finally, what other plans has the company got for, say, 2021 and beyond?
So we are always, all the time, adding more capabilities, innovation to our portfolio. We're going to surprise with some high-end products in terms of, you know, we are always aiming high, so more capabilities when it comes to retail quality. Brands are expecting to get even better, because before it was a solution for personalized promotional type of items. Now that it's, you know, the brands want to use it as well, you need to have higher quality in terms of the print quality, more speed, more capabilities in different areas. So really, we will be able to serve more demands, more requirement from the market, and we will be able to bring more product, more application to the market. And it's really, we have an amazing team of innovation and a huge research and development team. So really, we are investing heavily in this aspect. So you should expect to see some cool stuff coming out of Kornit.
You know, it's interesting how Sharon was talking about how the pandemic has exposed several issues and trends that were emerging before. And with D2G now in higher demand, there's an even bigger need to innovate with more capabilities, especially in terms of customization for both consumers and brands.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the company is definitely one to keep an eye on, especially as Sharon said there, that the team has plans to better its portfolio and surprise with new products. Plus, Kornit clearly understands its market well and isn't afraid of pushing the boat out. Otherwise, they wouldn't have acquired a software business, which to some might be considered quite a bold move. And to add to that, I think it's also positive to hear that at least one area of the textile industry isn't suffering at the moment. I mean, it's quite an achievement for any company in this climate to actually do financially better than they did before the pandemic.
Definitely. Now it's time for a short video from this week's show sponsor, Epson. And after that, we'll be delving further into the D2G market with WTIN's Joe Link.
At the forefront of industrial textile digital printing, Monalisa has become the brand representing Epson industrial digital textile printers and a reference standard for high-quality printing in such fields of application as haute couture, fast fashion, apparels, accessories, home textiles, and sportswear. Monalisa means flexibility. It provides users with a single printer to meet a variety of different production needs. It handles different types of inks, prints on any type of fabric, and reproduces the simplest or most complex designs with uncompromising quality, speed, and repeatability. Based on Epson precision core printing technology, Monalisa print heads can place ink droplets on fabrics with extreme precision on specific predetermined areas in order to avoid dispersion of chemical components and reduce the quantity of inks dispensed. Monalisa comes in a complete lineup. Monalisa ML64000. Engineered for fast fashion, it guarantees top quality and productivity for high volumes. Monalisa Evo Tray 32, the most flexible solution with selectable channels configuration, the perfect choice to print home textiles. Monalisa Evo Tray 16, the market reference for quality while printing luxury and sports apparels. Monalisa ML 8000. High quality at an affordable investment, especially for textile products in small lots. Characterized by the flexibility and productivity typical of digital technology, Monalisa is the right choice for an increasingly dynamic market, which demands swift responses to shifting needs.
Welcome back. Now, earlier on, I spoke with WTIN's Digital Textiles editor, Joe Link, to get some further insight into the status of the D2G printing market over the last 12 months. Hi, Joe. So we heard from Kornit earlier, who spoke of how the COVID-19 pandemic accelerated its ability to install and manufacture D2G systems. What factors do you believe have led to this surge in demand over the last 12 months?
Well, there have been big shifts across the textile supply chain because of the pandemic, as we know. The crisis has exposed existing flaws in the supply chain, particularly around logistics. For instance, there's been an over-reliance, if you like, on cheap labour markets, which meant it was more difficult for textile and garment producers to source the necessary inventory, particularly in the early stages of the pandemic. So reshoring, the idea of manufacturing products closer to the end consumers has become a bit of a buzzword. But for it to be viable, digitalized technologies are a necessity. And in response to the trend in the textile printing sector specifically, we have seen companies increasingly turn to digital direct-to-garment printing technologies. So of course, social restrictions have also played a role in the growth of the D2G market in the last 12 months. The closure of non-essential retail stores on the high street has resulted in a surge in e-commerce, which has enabled the web-to-print business model to become a lot more prominent. The social restrictions mean, if anybody wanted to buy a garment, they had to do it online, which opened up print e-commerce to a new consumer demographic and a slightly older generation and one that would usually like to try on a garment before making a purchase. But it's impossible to predict the future. But having witnessed the benefits of web to print, it is very possible that these new print e-commerce consumers will continue to spend a higher percentage of their earnings through online platforms, well beyond the pandemic. So it's hard to see a way back, to be honest, for the traditional high street retailer. And of course, the benefits of D2G printing facilitate the web to print business model, as Kornit knows too well. And as Sharon already touched upon, you can print low minimums. Turnaround times are fast, and there's also an environmental aspect to this as well. Digital D2G printing is far more environmentally friendly or sustainable than analog screen printing, and consumers are increasingly looking for bespoke fashion as well, which can be achieved through D2G printing.
And I know you said it's impossible to predict the future, but what developments do you think we can expect to see across the sector in 2021?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, not a lot has changed, has it, in the last 12 months, but many countries are currently in lockdown, just like they were last spring, which is what led to the initial surge in e-commerce. So in terms of market developments, at least, I suspect the D2G sector will become even more prominent in 2021. But it's important to point out that this is unlikely to be a one-off spike in demand. The fashion and apparel industry has been moving more and more online for well over a decade. I think Sharon has already touched upon this as well, that the current circumstances have just accelerated what we were already seeing. So one thing to consider, though, is that some textile printing OEMs have reduced the amount of R&D spending during the pandemic. But despite that, I do think there will be new solutions brought to market for both industrial and low volume print service providers. The D2G market is all about increasing versatility. And one thing to note is that Polyprint have already launched a new product which enables users to print onto face masks, which we obviously know are in high demand at the moment. But off the back of 2020, I think we can also expect the market to become more saturated. And for new market entrants, there are a number of desktop-sized D2G printers available now. I think Ricoh have launched one, and a couple of other notable OEMs as well. But But we're also likely to see, I think, an influx in t-shirt printing startups. You know, the demand for bespoke fashion in e-commerce is continuing to grow, and you know, D2G printing technology is suited perfectly to that. You know, I think there will be more print service providers investing in the technology, as they saw, you know, their counterparts succeed with it last year. Particularly roll-to-roll businesses looking to add new revenue streams. At the same time, you have OEMs who we are familiar with from the roll-to-roll printing market, considering expansion into the D2G space. I've heard of several manufacturers currently assessing the market, but it's hard to tell if or when they are able or in a position to launch a new product to market. I mean, it won't be an easy task for them. It will be difficult because, you know, existing D2G printing OEMs have built up very solid relationships with their customers, and a lot of the D2G printers on the market, particularly the high volume machines, are bespoke to the needs of the user. You know, you've got your Kornit Digitals of this world and other big D2G printing OEMs who have worked very hard on making sure that their solutions are specific to the needs of their customers. So it will be hard for new OEMs to break into the market, but I do believe a couple will try.
Yeah, and finally, the D2G market tends to be US centric, but have the events of the last year altered that, would you say?
I think it is slowly changing, but it's a gradual process. You know, the country leads the way when it comes to personalization and e-commerce, and US consumers spend large volumes on fashion and apparel every year. So it makes sense that the US is dominant when it comes to D2G printing. But I guess as a rule of thumb, the further east you get, arguably the D2G printing market becomes less significant. But, you know, there are emerging markets to take note of, particularly in the Asia Pacific region. Epson have shown the way already this year by signing a deal with a new distributor to sell its D2G printers into Vietnam. So there are plenty of opportunities for D2G OEMs outside of the US.
Well, that's some great insight there from Joe. I mean, it looks like there's a lot more room for development in the D2G market as fashion continues to move online. And of course, it makes this increased need for sustainable production as well.
Yeah, and it's promising that the sector is still able to offer versatile solutions despite the lack of R&D spending caused by the pandemic. And this idea of using D2G to print onto face masks is particularly relevant right now.
Well, that's all we've got time for in this week's show, but do join us at the same time next week for our ISPO Munich online special. As always, we have a couple of interesting guests lined up from this area of the industry, so be sure to tune in.
See you next time.